Hello and welcome to the Uprising Show. And today I have two very experienced and fascinating guests, especially in the world of healthcare and healthcare operations. So I would like to immediately welcome Catherine Ketter. Hi, Catherine. And Frederik Mueller. Hello. And let's jump us directly to a little bit about your intro by yourself. Catherine, let's start with you.
So thanks for having me. I'm Kat Ketter. I'm the Associate Vice President of Member Experience for Jefferson Health Plans. So we are a managed care organization. We serve about 400,000 members in Philadelphia and New Jersey, and just grateful to be here and thinking about the connections today.
Thanks, Catherine. Frederick.
Hey Vivek, thank you for having me today. My name is Frederik Mueller. I am the co-founder and CEO of Third Way Health. We provide healthcare operations as a service, leveraging people, strong processes, and technology to support providers and payers in improving member experience and access and all sorts of other operational challenges.
Great. Welcome, Frederick. So I like to start by first asking uh, obvious but very interesting question to me because I'm always curious how people end up where they are. So could you each please share a pivotal moment in from your life, from your career, that how you ended up being in healthcare? Catherine, you want to pick this up first?
Yeah, sure. So, I knew I wanted to be in healthcare since I was about 6. I had a microscope and I told my mom someday I want to study disease in older people. I don't know why I picked that when I was only in kindergarten, but I did. But I didn't really know how I would have a trajectory until later in life. So, as a young 24-year-old, I had a son. My son suffered a traumatic brain injury at 3 months of age. He was not expected to survive, and he did survive. Today he's 18 and he's graduating high school. But, it was my experience with healthcare in the acute care side, the doctors and nurses and social workers that helped us through that experience. And I always said to my higher power, if you get us through this and you spare my baby, I will spend the rest of my life giving back to other people. And that's essentially how I got into healthcare and why I stayed. Because a lot of times people ask me, I've been doing this for 27 years, they'll say, how are you still inspired to come to work every day? Every day I think about my Aiden, I think about caring for families like ours and his, and that's why I stay inspired.
Wow. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Frederick?
Yeah, this is a great story, Kat, by the way, also, and that is really inspirational. I think my pivotal moment for healthcare, funny enough, was in a basement in Brussels, Belgium, because I got into healthcare kind of by accident. I used to work at a company called the Advisory Board, which is a big healthcare consulting firm, and I pretty much took the job because my a friend of mine said, "Hey, they want someone that is working with hospital executives all over Europe." And I'm from Germany originally, and they said, "You want to kind of travel across Europe and meet health system executives and do some working sessions." And that at kind of similar your age, Kat, when you in your story at 24, that seemed like a really fun opportunity. I hadn't had a plan to be in healthcare. But the more we actually started to work with organizations that were grappling with this transition from fee for service to value based care, the more fascinated I became, because I think that truly provider organizations that go through this challenge are super unique, and you're rebuilding the plane while flying it, right? You're retooling lots of incentives that have been there for a decade and even longer, and this culminated in a working session with CIOs, European CIOs in Brussels. And I think the line that always sticks with me is that 20 years ago, IT in hospitals was was the basement, right? It was like data storage. And now we're talking about, in this value-based care world, the CIO needs to go and talk to their physicians and their other executives on how to leverage data to really achieve the outcomes. And I think there was one guy there who said, "Look, I I started in the basement, and now I'm here, like, metaphorically." And I mean, it always stuck with me. I can't think of any other industry where you've had that type of a paradigm shift. And I just think being in on the ground and then also being able to partake in that overall shift is what really had me fall in love with healthcare.
Well, thank you. I mean, yours is more of um, you saw people who were on that path and way ahead of you. That kind of a nice way to gauge of it. Mine is actually more of how Kat's story is. It's like I was actually the same startup that I was telling you that we brought from Germany to New York. I was actually in Berlin, ended up in hospital for 24 days. And it started with a boil on my shoulder. And I was late to get to the doctor. And then I thought that this is all happened because I couldn't get the appointment. And when I was in the hospital, I just saw a job listing which was about a teledermatology app. And I was like, maybe I would not have spent the time in the hospital if I have used something like this. So I was sold on the app. I cold emailed the founders, convinced them to meet me. There was no position. They created this position for me. And then I ended up joining them. And then after that, spent 5 years with them, brought them from Germany to here. And since then, I've been in healthcare. And my lesson was almost like this, that, I really believe that technology and, everything, the processes, the people in healthcare, there is so much um, optimism I have. I see when people say it optimism, there is a notion that some see it like we are ignoring the problems. I see the brighter side. So this is how I decided to be in healthcare, and since then, I've been in healthcare. So that's my story a little bit how I ended up in healthcare. Um, all right. So, what aspect of healthcare are you most passionate about, and how does it influence your work life today?
So, great question. I think for me, I'm most passionate about health equity. So, serving our vulnerable populations, making sure that there are not gaps in care that we can kind of close on ourselves. And I think, it's meeting people where we are. So, during COVID, people got used to telehealth and telephonic services, and that's wonderful. But what we're hearing from members and patients is they want to see back face to face. They want to be able to actually walk into a physical space and meet with the member relations with the care manager. And so I think, my passion is making sure that we're meeting people where they are, and not just the members or patients that we're serving, but also our employees. So a lot of times our employees, especially in the contact centers, in entry level positions, they're encountering the same issues that members and patients are facing. So housing insecurity, food insecurity, domestic violence issues. So it's also a question of how do we close that gap, and how do we, to get a top tier member provide experience, we have to start with them and solve the problem with them. So my model is really the power of one. So we focus on one patient at one time, who then has one family, and then we affect one neighborhood, and then we affect one community, one state, city by city. And if we focus on that power of one, we really can close those disparities in healthcare.
Wow, that's very powerful. Thanks for sharing. And also to mention that we, on the home care side, the company where I am associated as a chief growth officer, we actually work with clients from Jefferson plan in our in Pennsylvania. So that's we know that when we have called for the customer service on our end to get information, it has been much easier comparatively to other plans without naming them. But I completely understand what you're explaining and totally makes sense. Frederick, what's what is the thing that you're passionate about, and how does it influence your work today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I am really passionate about the people in healthcare. I think similarly, and for me, and I say people because we're sort of at this intersection of, specifically on the practice side, of making healthcare more accessible and a better experience for patients, because we take over a lot of front office functions and try to eliminate wait times and get patients what they need in the manner that they want, in the fastest and most effective way possible. But we also work a lot with the care teams on the receiving end on our client side, because we sort of step in to become the middleman. And we also work a lot with, is on the payer side, specifically care teams that have questions, and call provider services lines or need to check on eligibility. So, and we support, care teams, we support patients, we support provider lines, for health plans. And I think we want to make sure that we are finding the right balance for each of these interested parties serving the patient so that they get what they need, right? And this is really hard because you want to be the middleman and you want to make it easy for the patient to have an answer, but you need to effectively connect them with their care teams where it is appropriate, and you need to find the right balance for the care teams to get the information when and how they need it. And so, at the end game, we spent a lot of time fine tuning, experimenting ways where you're a value added middleman, and healthcare is full of middlemen, and a lot of them, arguably don't add a lot of value. And that is, I would say, a large part of what we do is try to see how do we become this value added middleman and support the people in doing the things that, they like the most, including our own teams, right? No one likes to do redundant administrative things. So can we automate them where possible so that we can enhance the human interaction, between anyone that we, get the chance to speak with? So that's something that really is at the core of what we're doing, and what gets me going. But I would lie to you if I said we figured this out, right? This is a constant work in progress.
Yeah, it's I do think that, and this is maybe just my personal view here. Like I think I have come a full circle in my career. That initially when I started, I was like, tech is the saving grace, like it will help us. And then I have come to this realization over time that tech is going to be there, yes, sure, but tech is going to be the tool for the people. And once, and there were like, I have come this full circle, obviously, through like, there are small things that happens, right? Every time technology comes, it's valuable, but it also has limitation of, can it serve all the types of populations, right? Like if you build an app, does it, like people over 70 can use it or not? And then there's natural drop offs, so that's why you need to meet them. And something, Catherine, you mentioned initially, meet the patient where they are, and that's not possible with just with every technology. So I have come to this conclusion that people is actually number one, then comes tech, and that's how we make healthcare better. And I always wonder what do you guys think about that? What's your thought? How do you view this mix of tech and people, the balance? Is there one better than another? What's your view on that?
I mean, for me, I think the great analogy is it's hybrid. So hybrid is high touch and high tech. And for us in a contact center environment, figuring out when we can use a chat bot to have the member ask about a benefit, and then when does that conversation need to come to a live customer service agent that can really, do first call resolution. So that's kind of where we sit at Jefferson, is it's a mix of high touch and high tech.
Nicely put. I like that. Frederick?
Yeah, I agree. I think, to flesh this out even more, I think we I'm I started in secure communications, and so for a long time I thought that we could solve the majority of problems in healthcare if we just got more patients to message instead of call. And I think, the reality is I actually don't like to use a lot of these chatbots, because I feel that oftentimes in out of industry examples you don't really get what you need. So I think it's about finding that interaction. And I would say we look at this in from two angles. For one is we really invest a lot in supporting our own team members. So specifically, a lot of data aggregation, right? When a member calls, so many times, or a patient, there's more than one thing that's going on, right? They might be calling for a question on authorization, but hey, they have an upcoming care gap, right, that we could address, or there's something else that's outstanding. And so the hardest part is in the background, how do you orchestrate the data so that the person in front of you can leverage the information, can derive value from technology? And I think that's super hard, because just even having data alone doesn't do it. As long, you need to make sure that it's accessible, and that your end users, which for us are our agents, really have the data at their fingertips. And then likewise on the on the patient side, of course, how do you get folks the help that they want in the format and the modality that they want? So I think healthcare is a people game, Kat, per your point, right? It's high tech, high touch, and I couldn't agree more on that.
Cool. And so, Catherine, for you, could you describe how Jefferson Health approaches member experience? What initiatives have you found most effective?
Yeah, so great question. And, I love hearing when people say they've received great customer service, because a lot of times members will leave for a larger, well known name, but then they come back for the service that we're providing. So we really focus on high touch, member centric service. We're using their preferred name. We know what's their preferred method of communication. We know what hours they might like a call back from us. So it's really that high touch service. And then also some of the things like I talked about, we use predictive analytics to kind of identify, all right, all of our members who's most at risk based off of claims data and quality data, but also that personalized outreach going. And we actually go door to door. We have community business organizations that we contract with that they'll knock on that member's door and say, hey, we've had a hard time reaching you and we're worried about your health care and we're just here to help. So, the other thing that people really know us for is that we have that local touch in the community. So we're out at all the community events. We're out at laundromats, bodegas, grocery stores, wherever the member is, we're going to them. I think we've now had an outdated method, in healthcare where we say the member needs to come to us and they should just call us when they need us. But for us, it's really about going to where the members are to close those gaps, to see like what does the household look like. If the members coming in, to some of Frederik's points about providers, they're coming into the primary care office and they're dressing well, they're presenting their best self, but at home, things are not exactly how they're presenting it to us in the office. They're having their fare full of high salt foods and not nutritious foods, and they might live in a food desert. So that's really where our strategies for centralized outreach that's high touch, that's personalized and friendly. And, they're telling us, hey, I'm being evicted tomorrow, or I don't know where to go to get help with electric bills or water bills. So, that's what really is helping us engage our members in the community and then taking that comprehensive approach to treating them. So I think, as far as the initiatives, it's really just innovating strategies we have. And one thing that we put ourselves on is doing the right thing for our members before it's required by regulatory agencies like Department of Human Services or the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare. So we're thinking about how do we care for that person first and then worry about the money later.
I can actually attest that, because we had a client who came to us, and supposedly um, we weren't partnered with Jefferson, and then once we started doing it, I think we got the authorization from Jefferson like within 24 to 48 hours. I remember that, and then we initiated the partnership to like we will open the area. That's how that worked out. And then, and as you mentioned it, I see how you are saying, because that's a kind of, I actually experience it from the home care provider side with your plan. So uh, yeah, kudos to that, because again, we've tried similar thing with other plans and we were kind of told no, like you have to go through credentialing and all that stuff. So it's a different thing. But I think one thing I've seen, and including the things that you mentioned, and there are a few other good plans also trying to do this, is more of a community outreach in terms of, like you're saying, it's now outreach versus members waiting for members to come. I think that has flipped. That is not entirely, I would say, it's still happening, but I think that's the biggest mindset shift happening. And and it's much needed. This is how it is, right? Right now, I think that's the only way. We need to understand people first, and then go in serving them effectively. That's kind of what it is. So great, great share. Thank you, Frederick. For you specifically, from a BPO perspective, right? So how does company like yours, Third Way Health, ensure that member experience remains a priority in your operations?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and obviously we only cover a portion of the spectrum. And Kat, by the way, it's funny you mentioned the laundry shop outreach. I was connected with the folks at Fabric Health, which I think you guys are partnering with, and it's such a cool way to see the way that outreach has evolved. You know, there's startups that are doing the same thing in barbershops, right? And like it's really cool um, to see sort of the ecosystem evolving. But obviously, what we control specifically is much more in the context of when the member or provider or someone from their care team is specifically reaching out for a question, or when there's a specific need to reach out to them. And I'd say, generally speaking, the core of what we do is based on people, processes, and technology, right? Um, I believe that healthcare is a discipline between humans, and obviously, we provide operations as a service, and so people are at the core of what we do. And for us, that means there's a notion for a lot of BPO organizations that have not the best training, really high turnover, and we're trying to do this very differently. We pay well above the market. We pay well above benefits for our team members. We give them all sorts of perks and benefits and invest in their training and ongoing development, just because we think that there's a lot of human capital that we get to build with our partners, and having a great member experience, a great provider experience starts with having someone that likes where they are and feels well taken care of and has a motivation to stay there. And that's a really big part of how we try to impact everyone's experience that we interact with. Um, People is only one of the three legs of the stool. The second one for us is processes. And so that means both in terms of how we train, we obsess with process and documentation and training and quality assurance. And it's really, those are the guiding foundations that help someone also reach their full potential. And then, of course, the last part I kind of mentioned on is technology. So how do we use things like Gen AI to support our agents and give them recommendations? How do we give them the data that they have a 360-degree view of who they're talking to? How do we flag to them if there's any sort of open gap? And um, for us, it's really those three things coming together, and ultimately creating a really good member experience, a really good patient experience, a really good provider experience as well, because that's an important constituent group we talk to.
Interesting. And would you, I mean, again, I know about your company a bit, so I'm coming from the, this notion, like how, most of the BPOs have this bad rep that the quality is missing. This is why, this is the most general notion, right? And you probably fight this all the time, this notion of this, like, how do you service better? And of course, because the members are clients, or the your clients members, those are not your direct members, so there is a little bit of that. What would you say, like, how are you fighting that notion? Like, how do you, I guess, give this confidence to your clients that, not, we're not like everybody else, right? Like, how do you, like, process is great, but how do you showcase that you are really up to the mark with those processes?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. I would look at this from a few different angles. Over over half of our clients have never worked with an external vendor before. And so those are actually my most favorite conversations, because it's organizations that have said for a really long time, look, I will be better off managing this and that process in-house because it allows me to deliver it at a better quality and a better outcome. And what we try to do in order to give folks the confidence that our approach works, I think one is it starts with the general team being very much up to speed with what's happening in the market, right? Like, we don't want to just be a sort of passive partner that says what you need to do. We want to try to stay ahead of regulations, of trends, of what we're hearing, and be a sort of a proactive partner in helping our clients actually transform the level of their operations. For us, that helps because everything we do is healthcare, in terms of security, in terms of certifications, in terms of every sort of our process on how we actually learn. My co-founder comes from the Fortune 100 global business services space, where he built shared service centers in 17 countries. And so we're trying to take a page out of the Fortune 100 playbook in terms of rigor of processes and training that typically hasn't trickled down to a lot of the clients that we've spoken to, especially on the provider space. So I think, we're still a younger organization, so there's no question about that. We still have a lot of our way to go, but in general, it's been just our focus on the industry, our focus on people, and then just quite frankly being a flexible partner. I mean, we will tell you what we know and what we don't know, and I think we have a very good path of showing how we can learn things we don't know. That has also really helped us, specifically when it's about building trust with someone that you feel comfortable putting the keys in their hands.
Nice. So, in my way of rephrasing it, so really kind of like you're bringing the Accentures and McKinseys of the world, that processes to your org, and then keeping up with that quality, and making sure that's showcased.
Yeah,
Would that be a right statement?
yeah,
Okay, fantastic, cool. Now, speaking of technology, you both mentioned a little bit. We touched upon it. Data is a big part. We're looking at all these things when members calling, what information we have at hand, and so what ways do you see the tech playing a role in delivering delightful member experience at scale, keeping in mind that how do we ensure there's quality? Because I've I've had a whole career before this in just in tech side of engineering side of it, and I tell you, like, a lot of things are not well thought. It becomes a problem of just clicks, and too much clicks, and then too much data is everywhere, and at the end it's just the quality is messed, information is all over, and there's a whole mess out of it. So there's a whole part of that. How do you think about it in a very structured way, to put simply? So how do you think about it, Catherine? Maybe you can chime in first.
Yeah, I mean, I think our position on it is value or volume. So, a lot of times people say, well, how do you really strategize? I mean, you don't need 1,000 different apps, 1,000 different partners, but you need the right mix of technology. You need the right mix of partnerships. So, for us, we want our members to be able to communicate with us through a number of different avenues: text and chat, email, the phones, face to face. But we also struggle, I think all health plans, health providers struggle with what's the right next tack and really get me the most bang for my buck. I think what we struggle with a lot is the budgets. Coming out of COVID, most hospital systems are in huge deficits, $1 million deficits. And, there's not a lot of money that's left at the end of the day to put back into new tech. So for us, it's really what's the right mix for us. It's knowing our members. Again, we're serving a low income population, not a commercial population that has extra money to spend. Sometimes our population is saying, I either could afford a cell phone bill or I could afford a bill for both. I think a lot of times too, we think, okay, let's just have them hop on telehealth, but their connection might be poor. They might have low bandwidth. They might be in an extremely rural area. So, those types of things are the things that I think we need to think about. But to get that high level experience, we do need a mix. We need a mix of predictive analytics, of different platforms, telehealth, and member engagement platforms. So I think what we try and do is just analyze the patterns of how our members access information. When we're at face-to-face events, we use QR codes and we survey them and say,
Hmm.
hey, how did you find out about this event? Normally, it's not mailers or text messages. They say it's word of mouth, or I heard it through your dialer campaign. So if I'm looking at tech and I have a dialer campaign that's going to be fairly low cost, and I have this app that's going to be fairly high cost, well, in the world where I live in present day post pandemic, I'm looking at all the options for my members. But I think the other piece is that we have to anticipate the future needs. So, and making sense of BPO partnerships. A lot of times, health systems, health plans were very rigid in the way that we think. So it's nice to have a BPO come in that can provide that outside perspective and say, hey, this is the way that we've seen it done with other organizations. We think this is the way that it could work for you. So that's really kind of my standpoint, my viewpoint on tech.
Great. Uh, Frederick, your point of view on this?
This is a really interesting time with technology because it really feels like we're in this transition period, specifically with artificial intelligence. Obviously, in the contact center space, everyone talks about it. But I think what we're seeing is that, and Kat, I think you mentioned this, right? Like high touch, high technology. I think it's I think it's about like finding a good balance between the two, because what we see in healthcare is that a lot of the underlying data that is needed to provide a holistic experience, to understand the patient, is not connected at all. And so there's no point in using any type of AI if it's just a way of automating the low value interactions. And so I think we're really at an industry gonna have to find a way to thoughtfully compare, like leverage automation to bring the best out of in the people, right? So that the things that are best handled by agents, by patients, by care teams, that they're the most empowered to do that. So we live this on a day-to-day basis because we talk to many organizations who try to work with us and be an AI vendor, and we haven't seen that any of them can at this point really fulfill all of the ongoing changes and needs and escalations that we would envision to be a great human hybrid experience. And so I think we so my view on technology is kind of cautious. It's there's a lot of hype right now, um, but it's really, we can't lose sight of actually who our audience is, right? Is that patient, specifically if they're in managed care, specifically if they're from an immigrant background, right? It's like we're dealing with someone that is really needs a accurate, concrete answer to their issue. And I feel that we sort of have to manage that tension to continuously do right by our members, have financial pressures, and then not give in to what seems like technology being the wherewithal for all problems. Because I really don't think that's where the future is headed.
Okay, so cautious but optimistic in that way, and hopefully all these systems will connect. That's the story we've been hearing in healthcare for so long, and one day we'll have universal
Interoperability,
systems.
yes.
Yeah, someday, like really when it exists, not just the way it's seen there. It's there, it's getting better, but we're still far from
It's
where it
it's
needs to
it's
be.
interesting. My co-founder came from out of healthcare, so he's been in consulting for a really long time. And about a year ago, we were talking about sort of EHR integrations and the challenges, honestly, that we have trying to aggregate data. And he said, "Hey, man, I think I get it. If data was flowing much more freely and it's easier to integrate with the HRs, I feel like that would unlock so much innovation. And I was like, that was his welcome to healthcare moment, right? Like when you realize that that is a big problem.
Yeah. All right. So, in what ways do you think that healthcare organizations and BPOs can collaborate more effectively? Because there is a burden, in my opinion, on every healthcare organization, and Catherine touched it a little bit, that she seemed to be open with the idea of, like, yeah, you come up with, take away that burden, you have the what it needs to make it delightful for the members and deliver on the promise and the service. So I would like to hear, Frederick, first your view, and then this time go back to Catherine. Let's start with you on this one first.
Yeah, I think the the I think there's a few things that we see working with what makes a successful relationship with our clients, and where we see challenges. I think in general, if you take a step back, we believe that most of these relationships between organizations and any type of external BPO vendors should move to an outcomes based pricing model. At the end of the day, there's this inherent tension between any type of BPO company that sells seats or FTEs or however they want to name it. And I'll make this quick then. I think it's moving to a shared outcomes based pricing where it's really about paying for a successfully resolved member interaction, a successfully handled eligibility check, a successfully booked appointment, right? Whatever matters to the organization, because that gives a lot of room and shared incentives to focus on optimizing against the end output as opposed to optimizing against the input, which is what is the foundation of most pricing and vendor relationships between BPO organizations and their clients. Um, I think that is for me the essence, because then you create a foundation where you can partner around evolving processes, transforming processes, right? And for that, you there needs to be enough freedom and enough incentives for any type of a specialized vendor to have enough control of the process in order to work on one transforming it and future proofing it. So for me, I think that's been where there's the best discussions when it's really aligning the business incentive around a shared goal, and then the BPO organization having enough space to innovate a process and leverage their specialized expertise in technology.
Okay, Catherine.
No, I mean, I think Frederick makes a lot of good points. I think, this shared savings model, kind of like we often see in, quality-based care. So I work for Landmark Health, which was one of the United States' largest at-home providers. It was eventually bought by Optum because they were doing a shared savings. Hey, you keep this many members out of the hospital for emergency admission, and you'll get this cost back. So I think a lot of times we have to make sure that there are these incentives built in, that we know that we're both trending in the same direction for the goals that we want to achieve. Again, whether that's a membership goal or that's number of patients scheduled goal. So I think that's really crucial. And I think health providers, health plans being more open to having BPOs come in, being that third party perspective that can say, I know you guys have been doing this 30, 40 years, but this is what we see work in other industries. I think a lot of the value, when I speak at conferences, is you're in cross industry platforms. So we're learning the best in healthcare from retail, from Macy's, from CBS. So I think that's really valuable. And again, just having more of an open mind to what we can achieve together. And I think also it becomes part of the foundation of working together in a partnership. We often bring a BPO or even a community based organization in, but we don't explain as the health plan, who are we? What is our mission, vision, and
Mm,
values? So I think also starting with the foundation of this is who we are, this is what makes us different, and this is really what you're going to be helping us achieve. Because I think regardless of who you are, it's all about the why. It's all about what are we doing that's going to impact healthcare, and how does that contact center agent fit into the model? A lot of times, like in C-suite, where we know our direction, we know our strategic goals, but the agents may not, our BPO partners may not. So I think being really transparent about what we're trying to achieve together is important.
I think. Do you think these organizations you did mention Optum doing it? Are they doing it on home care side at all? Any of the health plans the same value based model, as in like to pay caregivers more or on certain cases? Is there any organization doing that?
I mean, I don't know of myself of one. I think, the reason why those organizations like Optum are succeeding is because they have a provider model. So they have an MD or a DO that's seeing you at home instead of the doctor. But I
Right.
think what we're going to see, especially with, new regulations coming forth and hopefully some new legislation, is that we need to pay our direct care workers more. So I think that's really going to optimize the home care environment. And that's one of those employee health equity issues, as we know our, you know,
Yeah.
direct care
Yeah.
workers are not getting the money they need to survive.
Yeah. Exactly. I also think that it's almost like easier to go with this model to on, especially with home care side, where most of the caregivers are like hourly. So it very clearly makes it like the cases where you have high quality care delivered and you're meeting the outcome goals, then the health plans can immediately say, like, for this case we can allocate more and the caregiver gets more money. And this is actually not happening this is what when I was actually literally like a couple of days ago I was discussing with my founder, who's the founder of this home care company, that like how do we, in a good world, how can we bring money to the caregivers? And this might be the solution to the shortage of caregivers, because what happens is the money doesn't go to the end at the bottom to the caregivers, and this makes it their second or third job, and this is why we have shortage. But if we can have the incentive coming floating in directly to the caregivers, it makes a sustainable career as a caregiver. Then people will make it as their first job, and then hopefully we will be on track to fight the labor shortage which we have, and we can serve more people. So um, this is like I hope people are listening this when we post it out. I want more people to talk about this and get this message more out. And this is like we literally discuss from health plan, BPO, and home care, three angles here, how it benefits everything. So I'm optimistic about this thing, but I also think that it's probably happening already on the provider side more. And now the question is how it can start floating another part in the ecosystem as well. So great. So now I want to go on a little personal track and conclude this with this final question. So Catherine, we'll start with you. And this is one of my favorite questions I ask pretty much all of my guests. So tell us about a personal thing that no one in your professional circles know about this, and this is your chance to share with the world. Could be anything that you feel is appropriate to share, and
Well,
go for it.
everyone on LinkedIn knows this because I do share it, but I think it's helpful for your podcast viewers. So when I was 36, I had a heart attack. I was 215 pounds.
Right.
I lost 100 pounds. And so I believe in bringing my full self to work. I believe in making time so that my staff they have an hour of personal development or wellness every other week. They can choose to spend that in any way that they wish. But when you're in your mid 30s and you have a high pressure job, you never think about the fact that you're not taking care of yourself. So I think that transitions into like how I care for my team, how I care for our employees, is that holistic perspective, caring for the whole person, not just caring about what they do for us, but also making time in weekly meetings where we just say, hey, let's chat, and we're not going to talk about work. That's the only rule. We don't talk about work. We talk about their families and what they're trying to do outside of the organization. But I think that's something I never take my health for granted anymore. And that's helped me bring more of that full person perspective to what I do.
Wow, very powerful. Thanks for sharing. Frederick, same question to you. Anything that no one in your professional circles knows, but you would like to share it today on this show?
That's a big question. I'd say my wife knows this, and she would laugh at me. But it kind of applies to the work that we're doing. I sometimes ask in team building events, and I say, what if you were a kitchen utensil, which one would you be and why? And it's just an icebreaker question. But I always tell everyone I'm a knife sharpener, right? And the reason that is because for me, cooking and a lot of what we do in healthcare is about the journey. And I just happen to enjoy cutting a tomato with a sharp knife. But I think that really applies to what we're doing. I think healthcare is a game of small, continuous improvements. And I don't think there is a grand revolution to solve the problem wholesale. And I think that has to be your mindset, right? And every tomato has to be nicely cut. Every patient, every member has to be well served, and you have to do the little things that at the end of the day add up. And so I think that's a tidbit about me and how I view my role and trying to make a difference in this space.
Great, thank you. So, Catherine, where can people find you?
Primarily on my LinkedIn, so it's Kat Ketter. You can find me through Jefferson Health Plans, and always happy to connect.
Frederik, where can people find you?
Great. I am on LinkedIn as well, Frederik Mueller, and you can visit us in Third Way at www.thirdway.health. Thank you very much for having me, Vivek, and nice to meet you,
Thank
Kat.
you. Thank you, both of you. Much, much appreciated. And thanks for your insight. Thanks for your valuable experiences that you've shared. And I'm sure a few of the things I want to emphasize out of this is, we are a couple of things, I guess. One is healthcare is. There is a reason why we are in healthcare. That's what I have started to feel, and realize that it's a different kind of beast, to put bluntly. And but we need more people in healthcare. We need more ideas, fresh ideas. We need more perspective, and we need to be more optimistic about it. That's the message I would give to anyone. I think I hear all the time all the negative things, and it feels demoralizing that time. That, oh my God, healthcare is demoralizing to an extent. But on the flip side of it, I think one of the message to this show is to feel the energy, to feel the innovation, to feel the positive vibes, to feel the good that we are bringing to the world that's happening, changing around us so fast. And I hope more people will listen, especially the things that you both have said, and we make it better, healthcare together. Thank you.